We saw the return of the king in this week's late titled Tuesday, 16th of July. Magnus Carlsen back at the online board here, and what a climax to the tournament. He won all 10 games on an absolute hot streak, Kramnik getting suspicious, and who does he face in the final round? Well, a young player from Uzbekistan, Yakovir Sindarov. I mean, Uzbekistan is just pumping out the grandmasters right now. This guy's another special one. Now, the winner of this game wins the entire tournament. Magnus was pumped. He does a quick warm-up jog. His father on hand to keep him cool. He's so inspired by young Yasser Serwan. Game now begins just as Wei Yi rings the gong. We see e4 on the board from Sindarov. Magnus goes e5, solid as a rock. Both players develop the horses with a Winnie, and now bishop to c4, the Gucci Reza variation, named after this guy with the greatest shoes in all of chess, in all of the universe quite frankly. We now see knight f6 from Magnus, and it gets fun because knight g5's on the board. I've no idea why white players don't play it a bit more at the top level. Hikaru beat Fabiano in the final round of Norway chess with this to win the whole tournament. It's got some venom. We see d5, it's the main response. Pawn recaptures, and don't take with the knight unless you want to run into the old fried liver. Eat your opponent with some fava beans. Now that wasn't of course played. Magnus goes knight a5, the check is flicked in, and the main move is our old favourite pawn to c ships. But Magnus does not do it. He plays very much a sideline, as he loves to do, bishop to d7. Now the Global Chess Committee are currently debating about whether this is a good line or not. Jury's out on that one. You don't want to take the bishop. Queen recaptures, rapid development for black, but Sindarov, well prepared as the young guys are, plays queen e2. Top move. Not only pressuring the e5 pawn, but if black were to take, white recaptures with check, pressure on the knight, forces c6 for the queen to defend, and stuff starts getting pretty bad. Takes, and then the queen's here, if you can visualize all that. So instead, Magnus plays the best move, bishop e7, prepares to castle, also pressures the knight on g5, and white's well advised not to take the pawn. A quick castles comes, and knight g4 on the way, hitting the queen, opening the battery, rook coming to the e-file, dangerous. So instead, knight f3 played, a voluntary retreat, but now you're pressuring the pawn a second time, and it's impossible to defend really. If you go e4, then knight e5 comes. Huge pressure here, it's just not the way to go. So instead castles was done. If in doubt, get the king to safety. Now we see takes on d7. Queen recaptures, and the pawn drops. That's a big one. Queen under fire. Magnus takes here now, centers that queen, a black widow spider spread in 8 directions, love a centralized lady, and now we see castles. Both players do a fist bump, explode it. The top guys do when they get the king to safety. Bishop d6 puts the pressure on the knight. It drops back to f3, and rook f to e8 here. The queen meekly retreating to d1. I mean, it's like the pieces have been set up perfectly. That queen side is more jam-packed than a Japanese KFC on Christmas Day. But the fact remains, after Magnus retreats the knight, knight c3, hitting the queen, poker face from Sindarov, Magnus spots it, he's world number 1, d3, white is a pawn ahead. Magnus has got to prove something. So he hops forward with knight d4. Has he just hung an entire piece? Well, no. If you take, then the queen crashes through here. With all that matter of fact, you're checkmated. The knight's covering the square. So h3 played. Obviously, not g3, you don't want to shed a piece. Now we see takes with check, queen recaptures, and of course Magnus, itching to get the queens off the board, snaps them right off, loves himself an endgame, saddles Sindarov with the double Fs, those are ugly, and now he prepares to double those rooks. bishop d2 and knight h5. A knight on the rim is a terrible piece with limited life prospects and not much of a future. Very common saying in chess, but Magnus has got a plan, as we'll see. We get rook fe1. To trade or not to trade, that is the question. Magnus decides to spice it up a bit by not trading, going for the check. He could have brought the second rook. That was the preferred move of Stock Squid. The king sidesteps, naked as the day it was born, and Magnus now offers a trade. Sindarov declines with bishop e3. Please repair my pawn structure, give me the Great Wall of China, and Magnus says no. Plays pawn h6, gives the king some Lufthansa. We get knight d5 centralizing. Magnus drops back, still covering c7. Now bishop d2 opens the rooks and creates the threat of knight e7 check, picking up a rook or a dark squared bishop. And normally Magnus is getting out the forking way here with king f8 or king h7, but he doesn't do it. He plays our old favourite, moves the c pawn, but now this check comes, forcing Magnus to give up the bishop, and the rook invades. It's Independence Day for Sindarov. He's about to slam through to that king, pawns under fire, b6 from Magnus, rook ae1, doubling domination. Now Magnus goes king f8 to cover the square, but rook c7, the second one preparing to come down, and kebab. Magnus goes rook f6, an iron cross of attack and defense, and now the rooks double. It's ominous for Magnus Carlsen. He could take on f3, but he wants to hold the a pawn. He pushes it, baby, and now king e2. Given the miss by the engine, but it doesn't change much. Magnus now goes rook f5. He could have hopped forward. Is he looking for knight f6? We'll soon see. We get rook a7, exchange not gone for, now bishop e3. Ignore these computer question marks, doesn't change too much. They're playing on seconds. Magnus goes for the old camel toe pawn formation, and now we see a4. Shutting down on b5, Magnus decides to check, springing forward, and he's about to win a pawn. So takes was played. Rook recaptures, and now rook e4. Great play from Sindarov, offers the exchange. He's ahead on the clock as well. Magnus declines, comes back to his old favourite square. b3 gives the solid structure, and if you could get this pawn over to d4, then you'd have some very good drawing chances here, despite being a pawn down. These ones doubled. But with the structure as it is, white starts turning the screw. Magnus now brings the king into g7. We get rook 7 to e5, rook d7, f4 on the board, rook d8, Magnus a shuffle monster, and it's white who's got the plans. He's getting ground down. He's made a career on this. Magnus getting Magnused. Now there's a threat to take that rook, but not played because then the pawn recaptures, repairs the structure. So Magnus drops back. We see pawn h4, rook f6, back to Magnus's old favourite square, and after king g4, rook d4, Magnus offering an exchange on his terms, we see this king backpedaling. How can white make progress? Rook e8 played, rook f5 back. Here we see an exchange, finally one pair leave the board, and this white king starts roaming around over to the centre of the board. Rook b4 most precise, but not played. It now allows pawn to c3, setting up the old bathtub, and it's great play by Sindarov. He generates this passed pawn using his asset. Magnus under fire, so he plays pawn to f6, hitting the rook, allowing the check, dropping back. But what about this for a maneuver? Yes, you can push it and save it, but how about this for a move to undermine the structure? f5 on the board, breaking everything apart. Magnus crumbling here like an apple baked in the oven. King f7 played, and now this rook chops the pawn. Why didn't Magnus defend it? Well, then the rook would have come to f7, cut the king, come to b7. This one starts running. It's awful. This is now white's game to lose, but can Magnus mix it up? He brings the rook here to check, king sidestepping, rook e1, going for the activity, but check on the board. Now the king sidesteps and the b pawn drops. f6 under fire. Yes, you can take on h5, but the f pawn drops. King g5 therefore, check played, f5 to block that one. But another pawn drops. Magnus is 4 pawns down. Surely even he isn't rescuing this. That pawn's hit, defended, the rook slides this way, defended once more, and after rook b2 check, king e3, rook a2, a5, Magnus Carlsen resigns. He just got absolutely ground down like the way he's made a career on. What a game from Sindarov. He takes the tournament overall on tie breaks. Congrats to him, but Magnus still coming in a respectable second. If you enjoyed this game, check out the video on screen for another epic game of chess. Thanks very much for watching and see you soon.